When you think of American aristocracy, few names carry as much weight as the Roosevelts. Their influence stretched far beyond politics. It shaped the very fabric of American society. From the sprawling estates of Oyster Bay to the regal grounds of Hyde Park, the homes of the Roosevelt family weren't merely residences. These were arenas where power was brokered, where American history unfolded, and where an elite dynasty secured its legacy. In today's episode, we'll take you on a personal tour through these physical embodiments of the Roosevelts' political might and personal ambitions, demonstrating how each property is a monument to the enduring legacy of one of America's most influential families. Inside the Roosevelt family's old money mansions, Number 1. The Roosevelt Family Estate, Hyde Park, New York. Perched on the banks of the Hudson River, Hyde Park offers more than just a glimpse into the life of Franklin D. Roosevelt. It's a lens through which much of 20th century American history comes into focus. And this 800-acre estate, officially known as Springwood, not only served as Roosevelt's birthplace, but also as a canvas for key moments that shaped the nation. Now, the story of Hyde Park begins rather quietly in 1866, when James Roosevelt, Franklin's father, acquired the property. What started as a relatively modest home evolved into a stately mansion, expanded over the years to suit the tastes and ambitions of one of America's most prominent families. And its architecture, Georgian in style with a touch of neoclassicism, seems to mirror the Roosevelts themselves, a blend of elegance and pragmatism set against the idyllic Hudson Valley backdrop. Of course, Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt's imprint on Hyde Park goes beyond bricks and mortar, for the couple cultivated not only the political landscape of their era, but also the literal landscape of their home. The gardens, designed with precision and care, became their sanctuary. And Roosevelt, whose life was often a whirlwind of crises, found peace in these formal gardens. In fact, they still managed to captivate visitors, as they did the presidential couple, with their well-manicured beds and winding paths. Stepping inside the mansion reveals more than just high ceilings and elegant furnishings. Among its treasures is FDR's library, a room brimming with more than 10,000 books, and each shelf reflects his intellectual curiosity and deep love for learning. Indeed, it's no accident that Roosevelt spent countless hours here, using this space as a refuge where policy met reflection. This was, after all, where the seeds of the New Deal were planted, an idea that would go on to reshape American society and economics during the most trying years of the Great Depression. Hyde Park's influence, however, stretches far beyond its garden gates. It became a stage for international diplomacy. For example, during World War II, it was in these very halls that Roosevelt hosted British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, cementing a partnership that would be crucial in the Allied fight against Axis powers. As global turmoil raged, Hyde Park remained a calm and quiet force, an unlikely participant in conversations that would shape the world's future. Yet, perhaps one of the most enduring aspects of Hyde Park is its role in Roosevelt's famed fireside chats. These radio broadcasts, frequently delivered from the estate, established a new form of presidential communication. Roosevelt's calm voice, echoing through millions of American homes, built a bridge of trust between the government and its citizens. The estate, though distant, felt intimately close to every American tuning in. Roosevelt, recognizing the historical value of his life's work, commissioned the construction of the nation's first presidential library on the estate grounds in 1939. Completed the following year, it was a visionary move that set the stage for future presidential legacies to be preserved in similar fashion. The library stands today as a monument not just to Roosevelt's presidency, but to his foresight in safeguarding history. Furthermore, when Roosevelt passed away in 1945, he was laid to rest in the Rose Garden at Hyde Park, ensuring the estate would forever remain intertwined with his story. And Eleanor Roosevelt was buried beside him years later, further rooting the estate in the American consciousness. Now managed by the National Park Service, Hyde Park remains a destination for those who wish to walk through the rooms where history unfolded and stroll the gardens where leaders once sought solace. The Roosevelt legacy, etched into every corner of this grand estate, continues to resonate as a symbol of leadership, resilience, and a profound connection to the American people. Number 2. Val-Kill, Hyde Park, New York. Second on our list of old money mansions of the Roosevelt family is Val-Kill, tucked just a few miles from Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt's grand Hyde Park estate in New York. And this lovely abode was Eleanor Roosevelt's retreat, and more importantly, a reflection of her independent streak. Modest in scale and appearance, this small refuge quietly stood as a testament to her lifelong devotion to social justice and humanitarian causes. The story of Val-Kill began in 1924 when Franklin Roosevelt offered Eleanor and her close companions, Marion Dickerman and Nancy Cook, a small piece of land near a tranquil stream on the Hyde Park property. The trio promptly set out to build Stone Cottage, with architect Henry Toombs sketching the plans, though Franklin himself insisted on adding a few traditional Hudson Valley Dutch touches. By 1926, the cottage was complete, a simple stone structure, yet brimming with potential. Not content to simply enjoy the rural quiet, Eleanor, Marion and Nancy launched Val-Kill Industries. The idea was straightforward but innovative: produce handcrafted furniture and metalwork as a means to provide jobs for local farmers who struggled to make ends meet. Val-Kill Industries, with its workshops set up in a two-story building dubbed The Factory, became a beacon of opportunity in the community. Yet by 1936, the harsh economic realities of the Great Depression forced the enterprise to close its doors, leaving behind a memory of idealistic ambitions. However, Eleanor, never one to let an empty building go to waste, saw new possibilities. In 1938, she transformed the now-defunct factory into her personal residence, Val-Kill Cottage. Humble in size compared to the grandeur of Hyde Park, the cottage became her true home. After Franklin's passing in 1945, Eleanor increasingly sought refuge here, writing that Val-Kill was where she could find myself and grow. But the charm of Val-Kill was not in its architecture, but in its spirit. The fieldstone facade and oak floors, hewn from local trees, spoke to Eleanor's preference for practicality over opulence. The rooms were simple, filled with books that Eleanor constantly rearranged, as if her thoughts moved just as quickly as her hands. Her guest list, however, was anything but ordinary. Politicians, activists, and world leaders would regularly gather at Val-Kill, engaged in lively debates about the world's most pressing issues, usually around the warmth of the living room fireplace. It was within these unassuming walls that Eleanor penned many of her famous My Day columns, offering the world a glimpse into her daily life and thoughts. It was here, too, where she poured her energy into drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, her tireless work as the first chairperson of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, punctuated by quiet moments of reflection in the peaceful surroundings of her cottage. After Eleanor's death in 1962, Val-Kill briefly became rental housing, and by the late 1960s, the threat of development loomed over the property. However, a determined public campaign succeeded in saving it, leading to its designation as a National Historic Site in 1977. Now managed by the National Park Service, Val-Kill stands preserved, its doors open to the public. Visitors today can wander through Stone Cottage, which houses exhibits showcasing the early days of Val-Kill Industries and Eleanor's political evolution. Val-Kill endures not as a grand estate, but as a reminder of Eleanor Roosevelt's unflagging commitment to the causes that defined her, and a rare insight into the private world of a public icon. Number 3. Theodore Roosevelt's Sagamore Hill, Oyster Bay, Long Island. Sagamore Hill, Theodore Roosevelt's cherished estate in Oyster Bay, New York, served as his summer White House from 1901 to 1909, becoming as iconic as the man himself. Built in 1884, the 23-room Victorian mansion reflected Roosevelt's boisterous energy and deep connection to nature. Designed by the architectural firm Lamb & Rich, the home was not without Roosevelt's personal touch. His vision extended beyond its towering windows and peaked gables, leaving his imprint on the very layout. And yet, it was the North Room, added in 1905, that came to embody Roosevelt's outsized personality. This 40 by 30-foot space, filled with hunting trophies, animal heads, and gifts from world leaders, quickly became the unofficial symbol of his bold spirit. Here, among African lions and grizzly bears, he received diplomats and dignitaries, transforming the room into a stage for both policy and performance. Yet, Sagamore Hill wasn't all grandeur. The property sprawled across 95 acres of greenery, offering a mix of manicured gardens, orchards, and rough pastures. Roosevelt, a lover of the outdoors, relished these spaces, and his riding skills were perfected here, alongside the horses in the barn. And of course, his famous nature walks with family and guests kept the grounds lively. The estate became a playground for his children and a sanctuary for him, embodying his belief that physical vigor was essential to life's fulfillment. Politically, Sagamore Hill was much more than a backdrop. During his presidency, the estate saw no shortage of action. From its piazza, later extended to serve as his de facto podium, Roosevelt delivered speeches that shaped the era, most famously on trust-busting and progressive reforms. Guests weren't limited to politicians. They included naturalists, writers, and explorers, cementing the home's reputation as a hotbed of intellectual and political ferment. Roosevelt's attachment to Sagamore Hill never wavered. After the presidency, it served as his sanctuary. Whether recuperating from his ill-fated Amazon expedition or writing letters from his study, Roosevelt lived out his final days here. When he passed in 1919, it was the end of an era for the house that had borne witness to the highs and lows of his storied career. Today, Sagamore Hill stands as a National Historic Site, offering visitors not just a look at his life, but a window into the world of a man who, for better or worse, reshaped the American presidency. Number 4. The Roosevelt Townhouse. 47 to 49 East 65th Street, Manhattan, New York. In the early 1900s, a townhouse rose on Manhattan's Upper East Side, a beacon of Beaux Arts grandeur that would soon become a cornerstone in American political life. With its finely crafted moldings, soaring ceilings, and marble fireplaces, this residence was more than just an example of New York's finest architecture. It was destined to become the home of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. And with their arrival, it would transform from a stately house into a dynamic hub of political thought and action. The Roosevelts moved in during the nascent stages of their marriage, with Franklin's political ambitions just beginning to unfurl, and Eleanor's personal transformation quietly in motion. Yet, this was no mere domestic retreat. From the very first, the townhouse became a lively stage for discussions, debates, and diplomatic gatherings. The Roosevelts hosted a range of guests, from influential city elites to rising political figures, making this home more than just an address. It became the nucleus of a burgeoning political network. In its drawing rooms, over formal dinners or casual teas, ideas were floated, tested, and refined, often shaping the conversations that would later reverberate across the country. Eleanor Roosevelt, always one to move beyond convention, found these rooms the perfect venue to further her passion for women's rights. Her events weren't just polite get-togethers. Instead, they acted as forums for the exchange of forward-thinking ideas. She convened women activists, thinkers, and politicians, transforming her home into a meeting ground where social change could be cultivated. It was here that Eleanor sharpened her voice, crafting the persona that would one day redefine the role of First Lady. Franklin Roosevelt, too, used the townhouse as a springboard. In these early years, still climbing the political ladder, he courted allies and fostered a network that would eventually carry him to Albany and later the White House. Though it would take years before FDR's fireside chats captivated the nation, many of the themes that defined his presidency, such as his deep commitment to social justice and economic reform, were incubated in this very home, during intimate gatherings where New York's movers and shakers mingled with a man whose star was just beginning to rise. Yet the townhouse was more than a backdrop to their ambitions. It also played an active role in the Roosevelts' political journey. Situated in one of New York's most coveted neighborhoods, the location allowed the couple to establish themselves not only among the political elite, but also among the city's cultural and social aristocracy. As their social standing grew, so too did their influence, and this home provided the perfect stage for their rise to prominence. In the midst of all this, the house also bore witness to the more private side of the Roosevelts. It stood by as they raised their children, navigated the complexities of married life, and dealt with the pressures of public scrutiny. Despite its grand facade, this was a place of deeply personal moments, where Eleanor and Franklin's marriage evolved, sometimes strained by the demands of public life, yet always bound by a shared sense of duty and purpose. However, it's impossible to view the townhouse purely as a domestic space. The weight of history is evident in its walls, not just in the physical grandeur, but in the monumental decisions and conversations that shaped the nation's future. Here, Eleanor's advocacy was not confined to the parlor. It spilled out into the world. Franklin's vision of a reformed America wasn't limited to speeches. It was nurtured in the quiet of his study, sharpened by the voices of trusted confidants over dinner. Today, the townhouse stands as a quiet witness to those early years, when two of the most pivotal figures in American history were just beginning to chart their course. It remains, for all its decorative flourishes, a symbol of the intellectual and political forces that once animated it. The legacy of the Roosevelts can still be traced in the very architecture of the place, in its ability to simultaneously host grandeur and grit, society and revolution. Number 5. Roosevelt's Warm Springs, or the Little White House. Warm Springs, Georgia. Franklin D. Roosevelt's Little White House, located in the scenic town of Warm Springs, Georgia, represents more than just the home of one of America's most transformative presidents. Built in 1932, while Roosevelt was still governor of New York, this modest pine cottage was the only personal home he ever owned. It quickly became his cherished refuge during the pressures of his presidency. The Little White House, a 6-room wooden structure, is far from grand, yet its simplicity belies its historical significance. A straightforward one-story design with clapboard siding, it boasts a portico supported by 4 central columns and wide 9/9 windows, characteristic of the colonial revival style. Inside, the warmth of Georgia pine finishes creates a rustic feel. There are 3 bedrooms, a combined living dining space, and a kitchen. Notably, the home was subtly adapted for Roosevelt's paralysis. Flat sills and raised bathroom fixtures provide quiet evidence of the president's need for accessibility. And Roosevelt's connection to Warm Springs began long before he set foot in the Little White House. In 1924, stricken by polio and desperate for a cure, he traveled to Warm Springs, hoping the mineral springs would help alleviate his symptoms. While the waters didn't offer the miracle he sought, they provided him a reprieve from the rigors of public life, and the local community offered a spirit of camaraderie that rejuvenated him. By 1927, Roosevelt had taken his commitment to the area further, establishing the Warm Springs Foundation, a rehabilitation center dedicated to helping polio patients. But the Little White House became more than just a retreat from the city, and it evolved into a hub of political thought and decision-making. While Roosevelt may have taken respite there, he was not removed from the pressing matters of the nation. During his stays, many of the groundbreaking ideas behind the New Deal took shape, influenced by the harsh realities he observed among the rural poor of Georgia during the Great Depression. In fact, the president's relationship with the land and its people was a source of constant reflection, and it wasn't uncommon to find him picnicking on the serene Dowdall's Knob, contemplating the direction of the country. However, the Little White House also holds a more somber chapter in Roosevelt's life. On the 12th of April 1945, while sitting for a portrait by artist Elizabeth Shumatoff, he suffered a fatal cerebral hemorrhage. The unfinished portrait remains an iconic symbol of the abrupt end to his leadership, as Roosevelt passed away later that day in his bedroom, leaving the nation reeling from the loss. Today, the Little White House stands preserved as a national historic landmark, its rooms still arranged as they were the day of his passing. Visitors can see Roosevelt's personal belongings, including his wheelchair and various naval collectibles, giving an intimate glimpse into the man behind the presidency. The site also features a museum with artifacts from Roosevelt's life, including his custom 1938 Ford convertible equipped with hand controls. The modesty of the Little White House contrasts sharply with the grandeur often associated with presidential homes, yet it remains a symbol of profound historical importance. Roosevelt's personal struggle with disability and his connection to the American people converge in this simple cottage, which served as a quiet witness to the formation of policies that reshaped the nation. And, though small in size, its role in shaping American history is anything but. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Which is your favorite old money mansion of the Roosevelt family? We can't wait to hear your unique taste and favorited architectural styles on display, so let us know your thoughts below. With that said, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Old Money Mansions, and cheers until next time.